Like a lot of people from my pathetic generation, violently straddling the line somewhere between Generation X and the extremely pleasant millennials of today, I was subjected to many animated programs from across the Pacific Ocean. And as I watched these cartoons from China, my parents looked down in silent horror, wondering where it had all gone wrong. Meanwhile, I wondered if I'd one day be able to visit the magical land of taiyaki and deeply sexually disturbed people. Thankfully, with modern technology, I don't have to tell my landlord to fuck off for 4 months in a row as I save up for a one-way plane ticket to the Mount Fuji Suicide Forest or something.
Do it!
I can just visit Japan through digital recreation, and that's where Akiba's Trip comes in. Akiba Strip, Undead and Undressed is the second in the Akiba Strip series, the first of which we never got, mainly because it's a game where you strip people down to their underwear in the middle of the street. And, well, it was a PSP game, so let's be real, 4 people in America would have bought it. The game was brought over by Xseed Games. You know, they're one of those developers that bring over all the niche Japanese bullshit that would otherwise disintegrate in orbit before it even got to Western shores. But unlike a lot of other schlock RPGs that these companies thankfully localize, like, I don't know, Omega Quintet, Akiba's Trip seemed like it had just a bit more substance. I mean, I'm not a hard man to please. I've been known to fall prey to moe bullshit, and girls in maid costumes make my dick cry, but even then, this game seemed just aware enough of its own goofy premise to be great, and it seemed like it had the action RPG chops to back it up. The game opens with a text monologue by some unknown person, presumably the protagonist, explaining how Nippon Ichiban desu, and then we find ourselves strapped to a table in a dark underground lair. Now, I've seen enough hentai, porn, and snuff films to know where this is going, but the part that changes it from being at least one of those is when the purple-haired anime girl beats everyone up with a parasol and comes to our rescue. After narrowly escaping Hazama with Kitan's voice, we find out that the protagonist will soon die due to being turned into a creature known as a synthester, essentially a man-made vampire who feeds off of not blood, but social energy and the will to live. So, basically, a social justice warrior. Anyway, the girl offers some of her blood to form a pact with the hero, saving his life in the process. Let's see here. Action RPG with an urban Tokyo setting. Starting the game by forming a pact with a girl you've never met. Where have I seen this before? Oh yeah, Shin Megami Tensei Devil Survivor. Get it? Because I was showing clips of— this joke is dumb. I've never even played Devil Survivor. I'm a fucking sham! Anyway, the hero takes Shizuku, the girl, back to his local hangout, the game bar Mogra, where she's introduced to his friends who form the Akiba Freedom Fighters. They learn about the whole synthester business and decide to take to the streets in order to save the electric town. It's also here where you'll pick a partner, which is the start of the all-too-familiar dating subplot. Honestly, all the normal archetypes are there and remind me of the ones from the Persona games. You got the sporty one, the sexy older one, the pop idol, the annoying one, the Rei Ayanami knockoff, they're all here. The game's story remains largely unchanged until the last few missions when you're locked into a certain girl's path. There are normal endings and true endings, however, so in order to get the best ones, you're probably going to want to consult a walkthrough. What's worse is that the actual romance doesn't really kick in until the final moments of the game, so it really doesn't give you enough time to build up your actual feelings for the character, like in Persona.
Hey, why am I crying? There's no reason to cry. There's nothing to be sad about.
The different paths aren't even all that different, save for Shion's, and unlike Persona, there's no sex fucking. Well, no implied sex fucking anyway. You head out onto the streets of Akihabara in order to kill the synthester threat the only way you know how, by forcibly ripping their clothes off in the middle of the street in broad daylight, which, by the way, is the correct way to solve any problem, kids. You wear down the enemy's clothing with the main 3 attack buttons, triangle for headgear, circle for upper body, and X for lower body, including pants and skirts. Once their clothing has been beaten up enough, as evidenced by the completely natural pink glow, you have your chance to hold the corresponding attack button and strip that piece of clothing off. If the article of clothing isn't exactly worn down all the way, but getting close to breaking, you can get it to a button mashing minigame to wear the health down enough to possibly strip it off. Of course, if you want to cheese the computer out sometimes, you can simulate every date I've ever been on by continually trying to rip the clothes off until they eventually give in. However, you're rewarded for getting as many enemies to the breaking point as possible at once, as you have the chance to chain strip upon a successful disrobing. Pressing the correct display button allows you to combo strips together. Get enough of them at once and you'll enter a fever state, after which you get one final button prompt to fully strip them, underwear and all. This is the only way to collect underwear in the game, and since those can be worn or sold to shops, it's highly recommended. So remember kids, if you don't want to work that nasty, sweaty summer job at the Bojangles down the street, just start ripping people's clothes off and stealing their underwear, then head to any retail establishment and sell their used undergarments for fun and profit. As for the player, you're more or less constrained to the same limits, as your clothes can only take so many hits before they appear tattered and ready to be torn off. Thankfully, you can hold the L1 button to stop for a second and adjust yourself, repairing your garments to full health. With the obvious caveat of this being that it takes a couple of seconds and the enemies will continually hound you like no-life wasteoids hunting for amiibos at Walmart at 3 a.m. You can also hold the R1 button to dodge most attacks, and even attacking during these dodge animations can allow you to counter-hit or counter-strip with proper timing. You can also command your partner with the D-pad, with each direction relaying a different stratagem to them. The up button, however, unleashes a powerful unison attack that you unlock later in the game that can instantly strip opponents and knock everyone else down around them for a few seconds. Oh, and the square button jumps. It doesn't really do anything, but you can do that, so that's cool, I guess. Unfortunately, despite the fact that this is an action RPG, the combat is not this game's forte. The controls can be described as rigid at best, and the detailed animations on the characters can cause attacks to be interrupted or miss entirely. For instance, attacking while pressing a direction on the analog stick initiates a lengthy super attack that can be interrupted by opponents who want to damage or strip you. And since there's no lock-on button in this game, moving towards an opponent is the only way to target them, which can lead to mistakenly unleashing these attacks often. Even worse is that sometimes after having a piece of clothing removed, your character will act surprised for a second, which can also be interrupted with more stripping. So if you're not careful and the computer wills it, you can be combo stripped to death in seconds. Also, the camera controls with all the finesse of a League of Legends player entering modern society, and is especially unhelpful in tight spaces, which is a shame considering a big chunk of this game is navigating and fighting in small back alleys. And lastly, many weapons have a range only slightly longer than my dick, making them nigh ineffective and putting you at a major disadvantage against opponents with longer weapons. So there's almost no point in using a weapon that's not a sword type. Thankfully though, the game allows you to use other weapons and clothing in synthesis to strengthen the ones that you really like, since they never level up with you. For a fee, the player character's sister can provide this service for you, but it's only worthwhile if you've managed to score a rare high-level item. Otherwise, the upgrade is barely noticeable. Other than that, you can go to the different shops in the game, many of which are based on real Akiba locations, to get stronger clothes and weapons. Just don't expect to find anything too powerful. The game really does rely on the synthesis system for you to get the strongest stuff. Since pocket change isn't common for enemies to drop, at least enough to get a lot of stuff with, you'll be forced to sell a lot of unnecessary items at stores. The only downside is that the interface is a bigger mess than my bathroom after a 4 Loko and 2 quesaritos. Some types of items stack on top of each other in your inventory, such as shoes and underwears, but clothes and weapons don't, so you'll spend a while searching your bag for duplicates, and it's really just a cluttered, unorganized mess. Which is a shame because the UI is otherwise unoffensive and clean. While there are occasionally random events that can start battles on the street, there are no random encounters in this game outside of missions and side missions. So, in order to grind, you can whip out the camera app on your in-game cell phone and take a picture to scan for synthesters, then talk to the offending individuals to start a fight. Just be careful, because other synthesters can join in the battle, and passerby that get hit might retaliate as well. So you could end up in what appears to be Central Philadelphia the night they won the World Series. While risky, these encounters can provide ample opportunity for you to pick up rare items, weapons, and other fun things like alternate stripping and walking animations. Take caution though, if the police catch you fighting, they can arrest and fine you. Unless you manage to strip them too, but I wouldn't recommend it, as they tend to be the most powerful enemies in the game. Once you're done doing side missions and beating the piss out of random people on the street though, you start to notice how repetitive the story mission structure is. It usually alternates between a story event and then a regular freedom fighter patrol. That's it. It literally never deviates from this pattern for the entire campaign. These both involve just going to a place on the map and getting into a scripted fight, even if there's some other objective aside from that. The side missions, on the other hand, can be pretty varied and actually require you to do some non-battle related work, so they're a nice change of pace from the fighting. I should also mention some of the other features of the cell phone menu while I'm at it. You can get some really weird or sometimes story-related emails, and you'll also get email alerts for when a side mission's availability is about to expire. Occasionally, threads will pop up on the in-game social network, Pitter, discussing various topics related to the plot. Now, these two features in particular I really like because they're great examples of how well the translation is in this game. Remember how I mentioned this game in my review of Honey Pop? It's the same situation as in that game. The translation team didn't just convert this stuff cut and dry. They put some personality into it and a bit of Western sense of humor. It's especially evident in the Pitter conversations, which I feel are more or less like real forum threads on the internet these days. And I mean, it's a little weird and ironic having Japanese people call each other weeaboos, but yeah, it's still cool. So you work your way through the Synthestor conspiracy, meeting friends and enemies along the way, and you finally take down Zenya Amo, that guy from the beginning of the game. Turns out he wasn't the true culprit after all, though. It was this guy who you saw earlier in the game, randomly in a cutscene. Wait. So you're telling me that the guy who looks like Chad Kroger, who has his own character portrait and a big fuck-ass glowing purple sword is the bad guy? I won't go too into it, but he's using the city to create a dark engine that threatens the lives of all the otaku who live there. So it's up to you and whichever girl whose route you're on to stop him. Don't worry though, the boss battles are laughably easy. Most of the time they won't let you strip whoever it is during the first phase of battle, so you're forced to just wail away on them until the game decides they've had enough. The bosses can sometimes employ the same clothes fixing mechanic that you can, but it rarely happens. Due to the fact that these are often mano-a-mano matches, as long as you keep hammering them with attacks, they'll almost never get a counter in, and even if they do, you can just let your partner distract them while you run off and fix your clothes. In fact, I didn't get a single game over throughout the entire course of my playthrough. I just spammed the attack button and retreated when necessary, and I ended up getting through the game with flying colors. I actually sped through this playthrough in order to record the footage for this review, and thanks to a few lucky high-level items, I actually did better than when I was playing this game through the first time, taking my time and completing the majority of the side missions. And keep in mind, I wasn't doing a New Game Plus. I originally played this on the Vita, so I had to start fresh on the PS4 to record this. Anyway, that's kind of the entire story. You take down the big bad, vow to live your life to the fullest with Akiba in your heart, and you get the girl, as long as you chose the correct dialogue choices. It's not a mind-blowing story, but it's definitely not offensive. It's just average. There's a few twists and turns, but you'll see them coming a mile away. Although it's weird, the story kind of attempts to make some sort of social commentary.
You see, contrary to popular belief, all men are not created equal. Rather, every man has his worth. And otaku are no exception. All they do is consume that which they're given. They make no contribution to society. They pursue no real goal. They're jacks of no trade and masters of nothing.
The game looks fine enough. It's definitely a step up from its PSP predecessor. The environments seem to capture the feel of Akihabara with plenty of NPCs wandering around, although it obviously runs a lot better on the PS4. The music isn't really anything to write home about, as there usually isn't any playing when you're out wandering the streets, but like games with similar soundtracks like The World Ends With You and Persona 3, there's a few tracks that'll bury your way into the back of your mind, mostly the shop themes. The voice acting is well done too, for the most part. I mean, there's a lot of familiar English voice actors from the anime, and hey, Shizuku, I don't want to alarm you, but we just happen to be in the middle of one of the most busy cities in the world, so, you know, maybe you could just speak the fuck up a little bit! So, while it's not the best action RPG, or beat 'em up, or strip 'em down, or however you want to classify this game, Akiba Strip is still an enjoyable experience. What it lacks in polish and finesse, it more than makes up for with charm, due to being self-aware of its own goofy nature. The translation team did a good job making it entertaining, too, thanks to a script that doesn't bother taking time to explain terms you'd already be familiar with if you were deciding to play this game in the first place. And there's some genuinely funny dialogue options. You know, it's not super long either, so the New Game Plus mode the game comes with feel justified. The game's on all the major PlayStation consoles out currently, meaning PS4, PS3, and Vita. Though, I should mention that the PS4 version comes with all the DLC packed in for free, and it even includes streaming tools and a visual editor that allows you to fuck with nearly every visual aspect of the game. And as for you elitist shitheads, don't you worry, the game just got put on Steam not too long ago, along with many of the aforementioned perks, so you don't even have to be a console plebeian to enjoy this experience. Pitted against comparable games, namely niche Japanese RPGs with tons of perf factor, Akiba Strip seems to focus more on the gameplay and less on the fan service, and I think it's better for it. I mean, I'd rather play this game any day of the week than half of the gutter trash RPGs that companies like Idea Factory and Compile Heart put out. I guess I figured that this game would be full of C-cupped 12-year-olds in bikinis, and I was really happy when I found out that wasn't the case. There's only one of those in this game. Is it a better action RPG than, say, Bloodborne or Kingdom Hearts? No, don't be fucking crazy. But it does kick the shit out of all 72 Hyperdimension Neptunia games they've made.
Stop! Stop making these games! Oh, God, stop! Stop!
What's up, guys? Junk Food King here. Thank you for watching this review. I'm still trying to find my style, so let me know what you liked or didn't like in the comments below. Comments and criticisms are greatly appreciated. If you want to see more stuff like this more often, consider supporting me on Patreon. And of course, big thanks to Sean and Justin S. for backing me on there. You guys are awesome. If you want to see more of my stuff right now, there's the previous episode of Filthy Anime Trash on Long Live the Queen, the Honey Pop review I mentioned in this video, and lastly, a video of me and my fellow co-hosts from the Random Assault podcasts fucking around at the Boston Festival of Indie Games last year. Again, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys again soon.